Hey gang, Alan Combies here. How are you? Hey, just doing some work from home today, and was thinking about you, so I thought I'd make a video. And this morning well, I should say that I've said this before in other videos, but one of the things I really believe is that when working on yourself using tapping, specifically faster EFT style, there are three, I think, ways to approach the work. One is obviously getting a session with another practitioner. I think that having another pair of eyes on your challenges, your problems, your pains, your symptoms can be super beneficial. And to have, I always say, when you have two heads come together, there's an exponential effect. As long as those two heads have the same intention, which is to change how you are creating your current results. The second is heat of the moment tapping, and that is essentially becoming more aware of when you're experiencing discomfort, when you're experiencing what I'll call just troubled thinking. Thinking that triggers. Anytime you get triggered, so it could be a look on someone's face, it could be something someone said, it could be something you see on TV, but it's triggering you because of how you feel. So it's not the thing outside of you. The thing outside of you is triggering a thought pattern, a belief system, and that is what is making you feel a certain way. So what you can do is recognize when you're being triggered and then tap in the heat of the moment. If you can change that belief system or that pattern of thinking in the moment, all the better. But really, I think the most powerful part of tapping in the heat of the moment is beginning to train yourself to recognize when you're being triggered, because that's really the first step. So many of us are walking around the world as trance monkeys. We're just in one trance and from one trance into the next, and it's almost as if we're sleepwalking through life. The beautiful thing is that as you begin to wake up to how your thinking creates your feelings, and how there's a structure to your problems and the wonderful things in your life. When you're having a great day, there's a structure to that. When in your thinking, when you're having a bad day, there's a structure to that too. So becoming more aware of the fact that what you're feeling is really what you're doing in your mind is super, super powerful. And that's heat of the moment tapping, is just becoming more aware and becoming more cognizant of that connection and what you're doing. And of course, the third is taking time to sit with your own stuff and creating a list of things that are bothering you. It could be around one subject. It could be a list of memories, traumatic memories that are bothering you, and really just spending time exploring the structure and taking a look at what is it that's really bothering you, and really tapping and being persistent and thorough and tapping through all of that stuff. So one of the ways you can do this, obviously one of the ways you can make a list of memories that bother you. Another way is and I think this is where people kind of get caught up, is, they say, well, I'm not happy with this particular thing in my life. And they don't really know where to start when it comes to that. And I say, and this is one of the beautiful things of working with FasterEFT, is we have what we call the art of change. Aim, release, transform, change. And it's essentially just questions that you ask yourself. And in my mind, those questions really help pull the unconscious resources and make them conscious. So you're pulling what you've been doing habitually, right? Most of our problems where we can't really see our way out is a result of habitual thinking. And habitual thinking, by definition, is unconscious thinking. So it's just thinking that we've been doing for so long we don't recognize it. And so what you can begin to do is ask yourself questions that begin to bring that unconscious thinking into your conscious awareness. And it's there when you can begin addressing it, when you can begin aiming and tapping and releasing this old, unwanted thought patterns. And so when you're doing an art of change on yourself, it's really about asking questions. You want to take a look at, what do I believe to be true? What would I have to believe to be true for this to actually be a problem? Um, you can ask yourself, you can look for the internal resources. Questions like, um, how do I know this is true? That's the biggest question of all, right? How do I know I have this problem? And that one simple question can really begin having you turn inward, because it may seem like the problem is out there, right? It seems like the problem is out there in the real world, but all problems are an internal production. And so as you go inside and you take a look at what are your internal resources. Oh, hello, sorry, getting comfortable here. What are your internal resources? That's when you can, again, begin to make the unconscious conscious and begin to aim, release, and transform. You can also take a look at when you have this problem, right? When does it show up for you? And that'll give you an idea as to what the triggers are. And then you can ask yourself, has this ever happened before? Do I have any similar experiences from my past? Who else in my life had this problem? Now, all of these questions may not resonate with you or even make sense when it comes to your problem, but it's the idea of digging deeper and asking questions. Begin recognizing that this is one of the biggest things that I think has helped me, not just as a practitioner, but also as someone who's working on myself. When I'm working on myself, is realizing that no matter how bad things seem, what you are feeling is a result of what you are thinking in that moment. It's always a trance. Now, if my dog dies, my house burns down, and I get sick, and all of these things happen. Yeah, it's gonna suck, but it's always my internal representations, my interpretation of these events that will determine how I feel. 100% of the time, that's how it works. And so if you recognize that more and more, you will begin to be able to transcend your problem thinking and tap through it and move through it much faster, and maybe even find a silver lining within it all. So art of change, I hope that helps. Belief systems, resources. One of the things that I was working on myself this morning, one of the big questions was, what bad things would happen if I didn't have this problem? And it kind of shocked me, that I had an answer to that question. And it gave me an extra thing to work through and address, which I think is super, super powerful. You can also say, well, what we call future pacing. So, what would happen? What would my life be like, a year from now without this problem? What would my life be like a year from now if I still had this problem? Right? You can make sure it's safe, right? So, is there a part of you that has a belief, around what will happen to you if you don't have this problem currently? In other words, a lot of times the subconscious will hold on to issues and pains and thought patterns because it thinks it's keeping us safe, and that can be a very powerful one. I've had clients that have had really, really negative self-talk, and as we do a little digging, as we do an art of change, we come to find out that a lot of their self-talk is really stemming from one of their primary caregivers and the way they used to speak to them. So you can imagine there'd be this interesting link there between negative self-talk and a caregiver, which could be love, right? So even though it sounds like a very negative thing, and that it would be easy to just sort of, change how you represent it. If that negative self-talk equals love, there can be a lot of resistance to wanting to change it and let it go. So again, art of change, very, very powerful, whether you're getting work done by a practitioner or working on yourself. It's all about the questions you ask yourself. Look for the resources, look for the belief systems, be as thorough as possible, and your world will transform. All right? This is Alan Combies, FasterEFT practitioner, Morning Coffee with Alan. We'll see you in the next video.